The story is based on videos provided by the British Society of Cryptozoology, which were found in the Congo weeks after the disappearance of a group of scientists. The first scenes of the footage show a bit about the mission's objective: a prehistoric marine reptile known as Mokele mbembe. The scientific community claims that the animal went extinct along with the rest of the dinosaurs, but there have always been rumors of encounters with the creature in the Congo jungle, and some of the recent sightings have even been recorded on video. The only scientists who take the case seriously are cryptozoologists, who are dedicated to investigating creatures whose existence has not been confirmed. One of them is the renowned zoologist Jonathan Marchant, who is about to lead an expedition to the Congo to investigate the sightings of Mokele mbembe. He counters the mockery of journalists by citing several cases of species that were thought to be extinct and were found to be alive. Jonathan's team includes a TV crew, and everyone is instructed to keep the cameras filming all the time, as the best footage is usually captured by accident. Jonathan has a teenage son named Luke, who is very excited about his father's heroism. He even records a video showing the items in his luggage and is impressed with the state-of-the-art satellite communicator. His father, however, is not as enthusiastic about having to take the boy with him to Africa. Luke was expelled from the school he attended for leaking embarrassing images of the principal and posting them online. Jonathan discusses over the phone with his ex-wife, Hannah, wanting her to keep the boy for the next few weeks, but he cannot convince her. Thus, Luke ends up being responsible for filming the trip there. The first team member to introduce herself is the young Liz Draper. A recent medical graduate, her role in the mission is to ensure the physical well-being of the other members. Luke also films the two official cameramen sent by the TV station, who are Dave Moore and Pete Van Ard. Upon arriving at the hotel, Jonathan realizes that his son is thinking about going with them. The boy even shows off his mini ultra-advanced cameras that send content to a hard drive remotely, saying that the station probably doesn't even have such equipment. Ignoring this, Jonathan tells Luke to stay in the room and wait for Aunt Rachel, who will take care of him during the expedition. Then we meet Amara, who works for the Congo Environmental Agency. She introduces the helicopter pilot, Etienne, and says that they are there to ensure the preservation of nature during the mission. Charlie Rutherford also introduces himself, explaining that he is Jonathan's right hand and always accompanies him on these adventures. He tries to hide his resentment during the interview, but it becomes evident that he envies his colleagues' fame. Inside the helicopter, Jonathan explains to Amara that the legendary Mokele mbembe lives in deep waters, which corresponds to only two types of dinosaurs that inhabited that region. One of them is the docile Plesiosaurus, which has a gentle temperament, and the other is the Pliosaurus, which is much more ferocious. Liz and Amara listen to the explanations with a look of disbelief, not very confident that the animal actually exists. After an hour and a half of flying, Jonathan discovers that his son is hiding in a compartment of the helicopter. Furious, he demands to take him back to the hotel, but Etienne explains that there is not enough fuel. Charlie defends the boy, saying he just wanted to participate, and the atmosphere becomes tense for a few minutes. However, as they approach their destination, the landscape begins to become more interesting, and everyone looks out the window. Liz sees a group of huts, and Amara explains that this is a village of the Mbuti tribe. Then Luke notices the size of some of the birds and realizes that their way of flying also seems a bit different. Not recognizing the species, Charlie asks for Amara's help, but she reacts even more strangely, drawing the pilot's attention in a very distressed tone. The reason soon reveals itself when one of the birds hits the window and several others begin colliding with the helicopter. Everyone tries to hold on while the pilot yells a distress call over the radio. When a flock of birds shatters the windows, the helicopter crashes in the middle of the jungle and Etienne does not survive the fall. Realizing the fuel leak, Jonathan orders everyone to leave and move away from the fuselage. Always disobeying his father, Luke goes back to grab his equipment and narrowly escapes the explosion, which earns him a scolding. When the others ask about the birds, Jonathan responds that they are just large aquatic birds and cuts off the topic before panic sets in. He is also losing patience with the cameramen's coldness, who do not stop recording for a minute, even after losing Etienne. The group then begins to cross the jungle, trying to ignore the frightening sounds on the way to the Mbuti village. But what they find upon arriving there is even worse, as the huts are abandoned, and there are several signs that something terrible occurred there. Something leaves Amara very frightened. but she does not share the discovery with the others and hides her despair as soon as the camera approaches. As it is getting dark soon, Jonathan decides to spend the night in the empty huts. Peeking inside one of them, he sees that everything is broken and there is blood everywhere. Saying that this may have been a feud with another tribe, he simply skips that hut and moves on to the next ones until he finds one that is livable. Amara says they shouldn't spend the night there, but no one listens to her. As a precaution, Luke sets up a motion sensor camera on top of the entrance to one of the huts. Since the radio was damaged in the crash, and it is unknown whether Etienne managed to warn about the accident in time, the group prepares for the possibility that the rescue could take many days. Even the satellite communicators are broken, and Liz asks Luke to try to fix them. In the middle of the night, Dave wakes up to a shrill cawing and calls for Luke, asking him to check the outside camera. The boy is shocked to see that the ground outside is covered in giant bats. But the bigger shock comes when another creature that resembles a dinosaur appears on the screen. Now everyone is awake and very scared, as the noise indicates they are being surrounded. Then Charlie bumps into something, and all the animals suddenly stop making noise. The terrible silence lasts only a few seconds, and then the hut starts to be attacked by pounding from all directions. Someone grabs a flashlight and shines it on the roof, showing that the creatures are already opening a hole. They invade the hut moments later, and the occupants are forced to flee. They run to the river, with the monsters still behind them, and Liz ends up being attacked along the way. Upon reaching the boats, the others are dismayed to find that they have lost Liz, but relieved to see the monsters huddled on the shore, unable to follow them. They remain in the boats until the next day, hoping that this increases the chance of the aerial rescue seeing them. Suddenly, Pete lets out a scream and says he saw something in the trees. Everyone gets up and tries to see the creature, but it is too fast. At that moment, something strikes the boat from below. One of the hulls bursts, and water starts to flow in. The recording is interrupted for a few moments and resumes when the group is already on solid ground. Jonathan summarizes the incident, explaining that one of the boats was lost and the group ended up on an island, but he refuses to comment on the creature that some saw in the water. At night, they make a campfire, and Luke tries to extract more information from Amara. She confesses that she has heard reports about all these creatures. According to the folklore of the Mbuti tribe, that forest houses a passage called Abobo, which leads to a mythical kingdom of demons. Her explanation is interrupted by the unexpected visit of several hopping reptiles. Jonathan recognizes them as Lesothosaurs and is impressed that they still exist. This scientific fervor diminishes greatly when he sees his son approaching one of the creatures with a handful of candies. He tells Luke to stay away from the beast immediately, but the boy proves there is no danger. The dinosaur voraciously accepts the candies, and the worst that happens to Luke is getting slimed when the animal sneezes. After the visitors return to the water, everyone goes to their tents to sleep. The next morning, Dave records a discussion between Jonathan and Amara. She is very nervous and insists that they need to leave there as soon as possible. At the same time, Luke remains fascinated by his new prehistoric friends and ends up getting attached to the one that ate the candies, naming the pet Crypto. With Pete and Charlie's help, he puts a kind of collar around Crypto's neck, with one of the mini cameras attached. The plan is to find out where the group went during the night, as well as study the habits of the species. Amara remains in a bad mood and refuses to accompany the images when Crypto dives again, but Charlie becomes very excited, and even Jonathan ends up leaving his grumpiness aside. The transmission is excellent until Crypto approaches a kind of cave, and they lose the signal. Charlie reacts to this with more anger than expected, taking out his frustration on Luke. He wants to take one of the boats to search for that cave, but Amara interrupts him and says that this is madness. Already packing her bags, she declares that the only thing to do is go down the river until they find another village. Charlie becomes even more shocked when Jonathan agrees with her. Despite the importance of all these discoveries, the priority is to return to civilization safely as soon as possible. This disagreement leads to a heated argument between the two scientists. Luke also gets upset with the decision, but Jonathan is in command, and everyone obeys him. Charlie and Luke stay in the back boat, in protest, while Jonathan goes in the front one with Amara and the cameramen. It is then that the signal returns, showing that Crypto is in a clearing surrounded by tribal totems. Going down a tunnel, he takes another dive, and the camera ends up coming loose. The last images show Crypto looking up. and then a colossal paw steps down hard right in front of him. Charlie says he saw a fissure in the rock formation and concludes that this is the legendary passage. That place must be an area of the jungle that has remained isolated for millions of years, preserving all these species without anyone knowing. Very excited, Luke wants to share the discovery with his father, but Charlie says this is a terrible idea. A few hours later, the river begins to become very angry, and the two boats end up separating. The current pulls the back boat into a hole that seems to be the same one Crypto passed through earlier that day. Amara and Dave still want to stick to the original plan, but Jonathan refuses to leave without his son. Meanwhile, Charlie and Luke cross the cave and reach a mysterious place where the water is cold, which means it is much deeper than in the other river. The two begin to paddle with their hands until Luke hears his father's voice calling his name and yells back. Jonathan quickly paddles over, and the boy looks surprised that his father has come back for him. Then the boat suddenly shakes again, and Jonathan tells everyone to stay seated. The head of Mokele Mbembe emerges from the water slowly, revealing a majestic animal that does not seem inclined to attack anyone. Dave decides to go to the front of the boat to film that spectacle. Right at that moment, a huge pliosaurus leaps out of the river and snatches him up, flipping the boat and throwing everyone else in the water. Luke and Charlie manage to swim to the shore, but the boy cannot see the others and notices that the water is all red. Charlie insists that no one else survived and says they need to get away from the water. Indifferent to Luke's suffering, Charlie pushes through the brush without waiting for him to recover and insists that he fix the communicator soon. When the boy manages to sit up for a few minutes, he finally gets the device to work. He then realizes that Charlie is not nearby and almost panics, but he soon appears with a big smile, announcing that he found what he wanted. Crossing the clearing of totems, he takes Luke to the tunnel that Crypto went down before losing the camera. Only then does Luke have the chance to warn that he fixed the communicator. Very happy with the news, Charlie takes the device and throws Luke into the well. The boy falls into the water and almost drowns, unable to climb the shore because Charlie is there with a flashlight, ready to attack him again. At the first opportunity, Luke escapes the water and starts using the mini camera to try to tell the others what just happened, hoping that someone has survived and is watching the transmission. Through another camera, we see that Amara and Pete are fine. Jonathan also appears next, shouting his son's name at the top of his lungs. Amara says that Luke and Charlie cannot have survived, as the two went to a place from which one does not return. This ends up revealing that she saw them and rekindles Jonathan's hopes. Under pressure, she tells that the two were heading toward Abobo, but insists that she will not go there at any cost. Jonathan accuses her of having put everyone in danger, as she was the only one who knew about the existence of these beings before the trip. Amara defends herself by saying that the helicopter crashed far from where they should have landed, and she had no way of knowing that the group would end up so close to the cursed passage. Since neither agrees to accompany the other, they decide to separate. Still shaken by the loss of his friend Dave, Pete decides to stay with Jonathan and help him find his son, while Amara walks away alone. At the same time, Luke is making a farewell video for his father, in case Jonathan has survived and he himself does not have the same luck. His goodbye is interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the forest, and Luke grabs a stick to defend himself, but soon we see his expression change as he starts to smile. The footsteps are Crypto, who has come to welcome him to his home. But unfortunately, not everything there is so friendly, and Luke has a horrible surprise when he comes face to face with the killer bats. He tries to escape, but he can't run as fast as them and soon finds himself cornered. Luke is ready to leave this material plane when the bat right in front of him is hit by a microphone. Then we see it is Pete, and Jonathan is with him. Father and son embrace, and Luke barely has time to thank Pete for saving his life as he announces that he needs to avenge Dave. Running into the jungle, he gives in to the fury of revenge and starts striking more bats until he reaches an area where there are dozens of them. Even this does not scare him, and Pete keeps hitting the microphone down on his enemies as long as he can, even knowing that he won't leave there alive. Jonathan is shocked when Luke tells him that Charlie tried to kill him. He says it must have been Charlie who separated the boats on purpose. Luke asks what they will do now, and his father says they need to recover that communicator. Not far from there, Charlie is talking to the camera and explaining to his future fans about that place. He says that no dinosaur has appeared yet, but he guarantees that this will happen at any moment. and he even has the audacity to dedicate this discovery to the memory of the late Luke. Then Charlie suddenly stops talking and squats down, seeing that Jonathan is approaching, and even with the son with him, hearing the conversation, he realizes that Jonathan is following his trail through the jungle and decides to set a trap for the two. He leaves a false trail that leads the duo to the edge of a cliff that is also at the foot of a mountain. As soon as he sees his victims at just the right spot, he starts moving the larger stones at the top of the mountain and triggers a landslide. Jonathan is hit by the stones and ends up hanging on the edge of the cliff. Seeing Charlie at the top of the mountain, he begs Luke to flee but realizes that the boy will not leave there while there is a chance to save him. Therefore, he decides to sacrifice himself and lets go with both hands, tumbling down from the heights. Luke is inconsolable, but manages to escape and hide in the forest. Charlie goes after him and begins calling his name, showing the communicator and trying to get him to appear. Then Crypto appears and starts guiding Luke, as if he knows the best way to escape. The camera that fell from around his neck is still in the same place, and it is through it that we see Luke arriving, exhausted. Upon seeing the camera, he realizes that Crypto has led him to his own home for some reason. However, Charlie manages to find the two and knocks down the dinosaur with a kick. When he is about to finish off Luke, Crypto stands up and spits a large glob at the boy. Charlie starts laughing and says that apparently they are not such friends after all. Calmly, Luke stands up and explains that this was a gesture of friendship, as Crypto just covered him with his scent. Charlie only understands what he is saying when he sees Crypto's parents right behind him. One of them sniffs Luke and does not detect any human scent. However, that is not what happens with Charlie. He doesn't even have time to say his last words before being slaughtered by the couple. Finally safe, Luke records his last video, showing the world the Valley of the Dinosaurs. He says that the communicator broke again and that he will need to dismantle the cameras to use some parts. Filling his backpack with all the recordings made so far, he throws it down a waterfall before leaving in case he does not survive. Days later, a group of fishermen finds the backpack with all the videos that tell the story of the expedition, and now it is up to people in the present to believe or not in the footage.